Hello there. Today I watched the first 3 episodes of the Ironheart miniseries and now I want to talk about it. To get everyone up to speed, Ironheart is a superhero show about Riri Williams, a brilliant inventor trying to take on the Iron Man mantle. Created by Chinaka Hodge, the show stars Dominique Thorne, Lyric Ross, Alden Ehrenreich, and Anthony Ramos. To start, let's talk about what the show's like. Ironheart is a 6-episode miniseries with 42-minute-long episodes. The story follows Riri Williams, who was introduced to the MCU in Black Panther 2. The show assumes that you've seen the film, and continues her story from there. If you haven't seen it, Ironheart can be a little jarring to jump into. It relies on you knowing her story, so I'll just go over it quickly. Riri Williams is from Chicago. She's 20 years old and takes engineering classes at MIT. Riri is a brilliant inventor who started building machines at the age of 3. She wants to be the greatest inventor ever and hopes to one day surpass people like Tony Stark, Hank Pym, and Bruce Banner. At the age of 19, Riri invented a vibranium detector that caused a war between Wakanda and the lost kingdom of Atlantis. The two sides fought over the young woman and her device, and it led to the Atlantean king Namor being defeated by the Black Panther Shuri. Which brings us to the show's beginning. The first episode opens with Riri returning from her internship in Wakanda and struggling to perform at MIT. After being expelled, Riri finds herself returning home to restart her dream of building a functional Iron Man suit. In need of money, Riri turns to a mysterious group of thieves led by Parker Robbins. Together, they perform high-level heists against the rich CEOs of massive corporations. Riri finds herself torn between her need for money and her discomfort with the criminal lifestyle. Along the way, she accidentally invents an impossibly sophisticated AI that perfectly resembles her dead best friend, Natalie. We also learn about the leader of the thief group and where he got his magical hood. Okay, so now you know what it's about, let's talk about the cast. It's not a big crew. Most of the screen time is centered around Riri and her personal story, with the thief group taking a huge back seat. There's also a few side characters like Joe the technology collector, Riri's mother Ronnie, and Xavier, Natalie's little brother. Most of the side characters are stereotypical without much personality, the thief group especially. There's the flamboyant hacker, the psychotic explosive expert, the butch female brawlers, and the silent but deadly knife guy. Joe is a pushover with all the technology Riri could ask for, and Ronnie is the tough-talking parent who can't quite break through to her kid. Lastly, you have Xavier. He shows up to hand Riri mixtapes and reminisce about his sister, which brings us to the leads. Riri Williams, Natalie, and Parker Robbins. Parker Robbins is the charismatic and mysterious leader of the thieves. He looks after his people, but hides a dark secret from them. The hood he uses is a magical artifact with an unknown origin. Natalie the AI is a computer program that acts like a human being. It resembles her former friend and copies all of her mannerisms perfectly. Natalie tries to prop up Riri and comfort her in her times of need. Most of the time that means acting as a sounding board for her ideas, but sometimes it means taking control of the suit and kicking butt. Finally, we have Riri Williams. She's an overconfident inventor with a traumatic past. Like Tony Stark, she likes to brag about her intelligence and make mean jokes at others' expense, but she's also a good person at heart. She's quick to stand up for the weak and is willing to sacrifice for the people around her. She's also quick thinking and capable of staying calm in a crisis. Riri also has a fatal flaw. She's incredibly impatient, incapable of putting in the work. Her impatience often leads her to take shortcuts, and run into trouble because of it. Visually, the show is an average Marvel project. It's got a lot of cool built sets, some city B-roll, and a little bit of CGI action. For sets, you've got Riri's house, Joe's bunker, the thieves' hideout, and the various high-tech companies they rob. They dress the characters in a modern fashion, but give everyone their own look so they can stand out even without saying anything. They also built Thorne a real suit to step into so she can look good while standing around with the rest of the cast. The action is mostly Riri flying around in her suit and completing different parts of the heists, with cutaways to the helmet camera. For these scenes, they switch over to CGI completely and just animate everything but the face cameras. There's also little instances of the thieves group fighting and the hood showing off his powers. These rely more on practical effects, but still use editing tricks to help polish the style. Sound-wise, the show employs a lot of different types of music. They have both original songs and instrumental tracks, and they use them for everything from supporting the emotional journey to adding flavor. A lot of the flavor is modern American with a little bit of a nod to their Canadian brethren. Which brings me to my review. The story is a mess. It's told out of order with a lot of unnecessary moving parts, and there's too much weak groundwork leading up to the big moments. They started off really badly by jumping into the middle. Most of the audience won't know who Riri is, anything about her situation, or why they should care. The pilot doesn't do a good job introducing us to her either. It just makes her look like an arrogant ass with delusions of grandeur. They also spend most of the episode exposition dumping with very little action. They spend so long on setup that they end up montaging through the action to be able to fit it all in, which leaves the show feeling lopsided and boring. From there, it gets worse before it gets better. They introduce too much all at once, so you end up bouncing around between all the different characters without making any progress in their stories. It gets hard to keep them all straight, and you don't get to spend much time with any of them. There are redeeming moments, and Riri does eventually start to build up her personality to the point where the audience can identify with her, but it takes a long time for the show to find its feet. Cast-wise, there are good performances, and there's a lot of okay performances. Most of the general cast are okay. They stand there with a bit of persona going, but don't actually say anything most of the time. When they do get a line or some action, they do it well enough to fit in, but not enough to draw any eyes their way. Sometimes they're asked to do emotional moments, and this is where they tend to fall apart. There's some real wooden line deliveries during crisis moments, and it's very apparent. For good performances, you have Dominique Thorne and Lyric Ross. Thorne's Riri is a slightly overconfident young woman who's decently personable, and who goes through a few traumatic moments. Thorne plays the emotional journey well. She blazes too high right out of the gate and then ends up eating humble pie before building up the parts of her character that make her likable. Thorne makes the journey feel realistic and shows off great chemistry with the rest of the cast. Ross's Natalie is a computer projection of a teenage girl. She plays it a little sassy and childish, but shows a lot of concern for Riri and does a fantastic job with the humor. Ross also gets a few emotional bits and so far has done a great job of them. Visually, the show is okay. The journey is clear enough and easy to follow. It does have its shaky camera moments, but they do a good enough job with the big scenes that it looks alright. There's also some good flavor coming from the sets and costumes, and even some aesthetic looking shots every once in a while. There just isn't anything all that special for you to remember. The action is fairly mundane and doesn't look good enough to stand out. They mostly just have her flying around and using her suit to lift things, with all of the fighting actually coming from Robin Parker and his team of thieves. There are cool moments in those fights, but they are incredibly short and often take place inside of a montage. Sound-wise, the show uses its tracks effectively. They bring out a lot of hurt and sadness during the tragic moments and hype up the story during action sequences. I also love how they incorporate the music into the story so often. Like watching Joe and Riri bond over Morissette was pretty funny, and felt like a great character moment. Personally, I found the show kind of hard to watch. It's supposed to be a superhero origin story, but it doesn't really seem like it. Riri isn't that heroic, and most of what they're doing is just theft, with a sprinkle of murder on the side. The soundtrack is pretty fun to listen to, but even with it, the visual journey and the cast aren't good enough to make up for the lack of a strong story. The show just feels like more generic hero slop, like one of those CW shows. They hit their genre moments, but never well enough to bring in a general audience. Just well enough for the diehard fans. As for a rating, I'd give this show a 6 out of 10 so far. It's watchable, and it has nice moments, but the overall product doesn't quite work. Remember, those are just my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye bye!